The Innovators Network.
Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Welcome to this week's Killer Innovation Show. This week's show topic is in response to some inbound inquiries I've gotten about some very high-profile innovation failures that have been in the press and the media, namely the FTX bankruptcy and the Theranos final sentencing of its founder and CEO. Media have been asking about what my thoughts are with regards to those failures and what role innovation played in that. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's topic. The title for this week's show is Irresponsible Innovation. So we're going to take a deep dive in what does that really mean and what is it that we collectively need to do to move from this, win at all costs, this drive to achieve without any consideration of the impact or the negative impact of the innovation work we're doing, and turning this from irresponsible innovation to responsible innovation. So that is the topic for this week's show. So before we hop in, got that favor to ask: follow, like, and share. Follow us on social media, like us, give us a thumbs up, give us a 5-star rating, help others find the show wherever you get your podcast, and then share. If this is an episode that you particularly think that somebody else would benefit from, just forward it off to them. The audio file you can easily download. You can share it from either killerinnovations.com or you can also share it from theinnovators.network. So both places, you can easily share it, send it off to somebody, let somebody else hear what we're going to talk about in today's show. So without further ado, let's hop in to this week's episode.
This episode is sponsored by Zoom. With Zoom, you can streamline your communication, collaboration, and creativity all in one place. Zoom is the market-leading platform that provides video meetings, voice, webinars, and chat across desktops, phones, tablets, and conference room systems. To learn more about Zoom and sign up for your free account, visit killerinnovations.com/Zoom.
A few weeks back, I wrote an opinion piece for the Innovators Network titled Innovation Hero Worship, FTX, Theranos, and the Media. The core of the article is my belief that the media has a responsibility to not feed into the hero worship of innovation leaders. But there is more to the recent high-profile innovation failures than just the hero worship of founders and CEOs. The announcement of the bankruptcy of FTX, and then the sentencing of founder and CEO of Theranos to over 11 years in jail for fraud, begs us to look more deeply at the underlying issue of irresponsible innovation. So what do I mean by irresponsible innovation? The definition is a bit nebulous and open to interpretation, but generally, it is an innovation that is done with little or no concern for the potential negative consequences of the innovation. In a recent study, most leaders and informed citizens believe that the potential negative impact of an innovation is not something that is ever considered. In their minds, most innovation is irresponsible innovation. There are 5 key contributors to irresponsible innovation. First, there is a failure to consider and improve upon the consequences of an innovation. With innovation, it's important to consider all aspects of the consequences. This includes the positive and negative effects that an innovation will have on a society. By failing to consider and improve upon the consequences, businesses and governments can inadvertently cause more harm than good. Second, there is a lack of accountability and responsibility in the innovation process. Business and governments have an obligation to be accountable for their actions. This means that they must be willing to take responsibility for the negative impacts their innovations may have on society. Without this level of accountability and responsibility, businesses and governments are failing to act in a socially responsible manner. This accountability also needs to include the executives involved. Third, there is an absence of ethical standards when it comes to innovation. Ethics are important in any field, but it is quickly becoming increasingly important in innovation. It's essential that businesses and governments set ethical standards and adhere to them. Without these standards, there is a risk that innovation will lead to greater negative outcomes. Fourth, there's often a lack of transparency and communication about the risks and benefits of an innovation. Innovators and entrepreneurs must be transparent and honest about the risks and benefits of their innovations. This includes providing realistic information about how an innovation may affect society, as well as any potential solutions for mitigating negative effects. Fifth, there's often a focus on the financial returns of an innovation rather than on balancing its societal impact. It's important for businesses, governments, and investors, for example, venture capitalists, to consider the broader societal impact of their innovation. This means that financial returns should not be the sole focus. We should evaluate both the financial return and the impact based on the innovation's potential to improve or harm society. Now, not all negative effects from innovation are intentional. Sometimes an innovation can have a negative impact on society as a result of an unintended consequence. Intentional irresponsibility innovation happens when companies knowingly take risks and create negative social outcomes. A recent example is Facebook's conscious decision to prioritize engagement and growth over user privacy. Accidental irresponsible innovation occurs when companies lack the necessary knowledge or resources to fully consider the consequences of an innovation. Unfortunately, these types of mistakes can lead to serious consequences. Another recent example is the Uber driverless car that killed a pedestrian. The consequences of irresponsible innovation can be severe and far-reaching. Organizations that fail to consider the potential social impacts of their innovation risk creating serious problems. These include financial losses, public distrust, and even legal liability. On the financial side, financial losses due to irresponsible innovation are not just limited to shareholders and investors. They can also have consequences on the wider economy. For example, when FTX went bankrupt, it had a negative effect on the entire stock market. On legal and ethical, we must also consider that irresponsible innovation can have serious legal and ethical implications, as seen in the case of Theranos. In this scenario, both investors and consumers were misled about the efficacy of a product and the company. Along with the founder, the company and the founder were found guilty of fraud. And then what about public distrust? We must consider that irresponsible innovation can lead to public distrust of innovation. This could mean that people are less likely to embrace new technologies and products, leading to slower economic growth and development. So what is it you can do? The fact is, we must all work together to create a framework for responsible innovation that considers the potential consequences of our innovations and work towards creating a better future for everyone. This will require a firm commitment from all stakeholders to consider the potential consequences of their work. This includes companies, governments, citizens, and the media. For companies, they must be proactive in identifying and mitigating any negative impacts of their innovations. They must also be willing to take responsibility for these impacts, even if they are not directly responsible for them. So, how do they do this? 1. Articulate the goals and values that will guide responsible innovation inside the organization. 2. Educate the entire team on what does it mean to have responsible innovation. 3. Invest in tools and processes to measure, monitor, and mitigate the risks of irresponsible innovation. 4. Gather input from stakeholders to ensure their perspectives are taken into account. 5. Identify potential negative effects of the innovation and develop plans to mitigate them. And 6. Communicate the plans to stakeholders, customers, and citizens with transparency. So, what about governments? They must create a framework for responsible innovation that considers the potential societal consequences of new technologies and products. This framework should encourage others to act responsibly and provide guidance on how to do so. So, how do they do this? 1. Make responsible innovation part of government policy. 2. Consult shareholders to ensure their perspectives are being taken into account. 3. Develop policies and regulations that promote responsible innovation. 4. Provide incentives for companies to act responsibly and penalize those who don't. And 5. Monitor compliance with the government framework. And what about normal citizens? They must be willing to ask questions about the consequences of new innovations and hold all stakeholders accountable for their actions. We must also be open to change, accepting that not all innovations are good and that we need to weigh the cost and benefits of each carefully. So, how do we do this? 1. Ask questions about the expected the impacts from a new innovation. 2. Educate yourself on responsible innovation and be aware of potential negative consequences. 3. Advocate for responsible innovation where possible. 4. Take part in the dialogues with stakeholders to ensure your perspective is being considered. And 5. Support companies, governments, and other stakeholders that are making positive strides towards responsible innovation. And let's not leave out the role of the media. The press needs to provide accurate, objective reporting on the consequences and impacts of new innovations. This is essential for informing citizens and holding companies and governments accountable. How? 1. Provide accurate, objective, and complete reporting on new innovations. 2. Investigate potential negative impacts of new technologies and products. 3. Highlight companies and governments that are making positive strides towards responsible innovation. 4. Ask questions to ensure all the stakeholders are taking responsibility for the consequences of their work. And 5. Give a voice to citizens who are being affected by irresponsible innovation. So, what are some examples? So, here are some recent examples of high-profile failures from irresponsible innovations and the lessons learned from them. First up, Facebook and the Cambridge Analytica data scandal. This incident highlighted the importance of data privacy and security, as well as the need for companies to be transparent about how they use customer data. And then Volkswagen and the emissions cheating scandal. This case showed how important it is for governments to have strong policies and regulations in place to ensure companies are following the law. And then what about Uber? Uber got caught up in surge pricing during disasters. Some would call that gouging. This incident showed the need for companies to be aware of their social responsibility when setting prices and to consider their impact on citizens who are already in vulnerable circumstances. It is clear that irresponsible innovation can have serious consequences. It's important to take steps towards creating a more responsible system of innovation in order to avoid potential negative outcomes in the future. Responsible innovation is becoming an essential part of creating a positive future for everyone. If we make sure that businesses and governments take the time to consider the outcome of their actions and are held accountable for them and stick to ethical standards when it comes up with new ideas, it will be possible to build a more dependable system of innovation. To put it simply, responsible innovation is about considering the human implications of any innovation advancement and striving to make sure those implications are understood, communicated, and addressed. If we want to make a real difference in the world, responsible innovation must be a priority for everyone. So what do you think? When you look back on your own innovation, would you put it in the category of responsible innovation or irresponsible? Keep in mind, it's not about the positive or negative impact. It's about, did you think through all of the consequences of the innovations that you are creating? I'll be the first to admit, I've never really put the consequence view into a formal process for any of the innovation work that I have done. Given my research for this week's show, but also if you've been listening to the podcast for any length of time, you've heard me talk about the issue of unintended consequences. I have had innovation projects where I thought I had considered and everything was going along the path that I had originally envisioned, but somehow an innovation was applied and it had an unintended consequence. It was applied in a way that I never considered, and it had a downstream unintended consequence. And so this has been something that's been on my mind for quite some time, but with high-profile media cases now front and center, this has been the catalyst for me to take a deeper dive and really think through, what does it mean to have responsible innovation and irresponsible innovation? My hope is that today's show and future shows, as we talk more about this, that this will begin a conversation on what your thoughts are. Do we need an ethical standard in the area of innovation such that people at least formalize the process of thinking about what could be both the positive and the negative? I'm also hoping that this will change how innovations get presented, how the media reports them, how entrepreneurs present them when they're raising funding. The fake it till you make it, go as fast as you can, break a lot of stuff, move forward kind of attitude has got to change, because the negative downside consequences when you're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars, hard-earned money from people totally being evaporated. And then you look at the negative outcome of a blood testing device that gave bad results, told people that they had cancer when they didn't have cancer, or told them they didn't have cancer when they had cancer. This is not acceptable. We can and need to do better. So again, my hope is today's show and future shows, this will begin a conversation. So if you've got thoughts, comments, feedback, hop on over. You can leave your comments over at killerinnovations.com, or you can hop over to theinnovators.network. and leave your comments there. I'll be watching those, responding to those, sharing those, or you can become part of the conversation on social media. You can find us over on Facebook, LinkedIn, and over on Twitter. I would suggest that you just search for theinnovators.network or the Innovators Network, and you'll find us. Big red logo, TIN in the middle. That'll tell you got the right account, the Innovators Network, and participate in the conversation on today's show in social media. And that'll be a great way for us to have a conversation and get your thoughts on how do we move towards responsible innovation. As we wrap up this week's show, I just wanted to say thanks for taking the time for being here. Appreciate that. Appreciate the time you take out of. You could choose to do something else, but you've chosen to be here with me, and I greatly do appreciate that. If you've got thoughts, comments, feedback, love to hear it. You can drop me an email at phil@killerinnovations.com. Those come directly to me. They don't get filtered. And I'm usually pretty good about responding, or I try to be responsive to those emails coming in. So again, phil@killerinnovations.com. Or if you get the newsletter, the weekly newsletter from us, you can just simply hit the reply and type your reply right there in the newsletter, and those also will get routed back to me. So with that, thank you very much. We'll talk to you next week. And in the meantime, work on your innovations. Go out there, change the world responsibly. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.
This show is distributed by the Innovators Network. For more information and other great shows and content, visit theinnovators.network.